the main reason people are interested in automation is for efficiency's sake. Either it's a cost saving, time saving, which is pretty much the same thing. And the people see automation as a way that payroll can be done in less time or with less human direct involvement to make it something that hopefully you don't have to pay as much attention to as you need to in the usual way that it works. And one of the big goals for any company and any payroll company really is to have it so that anyone who is doing payroll isn't really thinking about payroll, they're thinking about paying employees. So that's really what the emphasis should be. Payroll is just a means to an end. So if you're thinking about a quicker way of paying employees and automating that, what it means is it's concentrating on the core of your business, which for most companies isn't payroll. So payroll should just happen automatically in the background and pay the people who work in your employ. And obviously the only interaction you would have with that is things that are exceptions and so on. So that's the holy grail, maybe isn't quite the right word, but that's the goal to have.
Yeah, I was just going to ask, do you think it's this piece around sort of like payroll compliance and people maybe worrying about payroll compliance, which is driving this automation piece, whether it be software or managed?
In some way, I can see that the compliance generally is something that if you're not a payroll professional particularly, compliance would be something that you would be very concerned with. And even if you are, payroll is quite complex, more complex than maybe most people realize. Automation of payroll or the roboticization of payroll is something that's been talked about for years. Crikey, I remember people talking about it 15 years ago, 20 years ago. People used to think, that's one of the things, it's on the top of the list of automation and replacing human workers. And that's something that's come up again and again on lists of different jobs that are primed to be automated in future. And it's never happened. And the reason it's never happened is as an expert system, as the amount of knowledge that you need and the amount of caveats and exceptions, payroll is not actually an easy thing to put in some sort of automated process. However, what you can do in payroll is automate things so that all you need to do is deal with exceptions, and that is something that we are doing in Moorepay. So one of the big projects that we're doing after we deal with legislation this year is we're looking at improving how you preview your pay so that as much of the decision-making process is done for you as possible in terms of worrying about what's changed. So you will be presented with, these are the things that you need to worry about and look at. And if there's none of those, then, you should be okay to process your payroll. The idea is to rather than having to check every single thing or run diagnostic reports, which is what you do now, it'll be a much more direct and transparent way of interacting with the payroll to make those decisions, check anything that might be something that you need to change or make sure is correct. But it will be done in a way that's interactive and as much automation as possible. That's part of an automation solution. So automation in terms of removing the need to check everything, to produce reports which you then have to go through in detail because you will just be presented with the exceptions automatically. Yeah. The other part of automation, which is something that payroll processors are interested in, is can actually some of the process around payroll be automated. So for example, if you are importing some data from an HR system or from some sort of timesheet system, or perhaps just a way of the data going into payroll and then being processed, is there a way of then processing that if there are no exceptions automatically, depending on how far you want to go, but potentially automatically generating pay slips, making them available, sending the backs, making any other payments you need to do, making the submissions to HMRC, all of those things, again, removing the need for human interaction if you don't need it. That is something that is already possible to some degree in our software, and it's something again that we're keen to continue to improve.
Yeah, thank you. I think there's like a lot out there when people talk about like automation, like the future of payroll, people bat around this idea of like AI and
Yeah,
automation and payroll. What do you think about that? Do you think it's a bit of a farce, or do you think it's like that is the future? What do you think?
it's possible. I've heard different ways of looking at that. So, I mean, there's a slightly facetious example of, hey Alexa, run my payroll.
Mm-hmm.
But really, actually, that there is no reason why that couldn't happen, particularly if it's a simple payroll that doesn't need any interaction. If you're paying the same thing to the same people all the time and no one is on statutory pay or anything like that, there's anything that you need to worry about, then potentially why not get Alexa to pay your payroll? But the more, when you're looking at AI more from the more advanced things like how does it make a decision of if someone is on maternity leave and their pay has changed, but has been backdated due to Alabaster, so that you need to go and actually recalculate all of their payments all the way up and make sure that they get any back pay that's due. There's quite complex things that happen in payroll. Could it be put into some sort of expert system? Could it be put in a sort of AI? Yes, possibly. No one has done it yet, which to me very much implies that it's not as simple as people might think it is. Otherwise, it would have been done already.
I think there's such thing as sort of over automation or the pitfalls of automation. Do you think there's areas as a payroll sort of expert in the payroll industry that still need that human touch? And if so, which areas of the product or the process do you think still require that?
The human touch, I guess, comes in when you have legislation that isn't cut and dry, and that actually is more than I guess you might think of as well. So you do get sometimes occasions where some legislation can not conflict maybe, but you can either interpret it in one way or another. And I don't know whether an expert system, whether an AI would be able to do that in a way that would be fair to the employee. That would be my concern.